This week's episode is brought to you by the legends over at Dog and Gun Coffee, and you guys can get $10 off of your next Dog and Gun Coffee order when you use the code BOWHUNTER, all in caps locks. Recently, I have been enjoying the Samba blend mixed in with the Hog Chocky. It's actually quite the mid-morning delight every single day, and I would highly recommend it. It's a delicious way to have a mocha at home. It's not something I'd usually have when I'm out and about as a mocha at all, but because I've got the Hog Chocky on site and it's freaking delicious, it's been my mix and choice of most days, and yeah, I'm addicted. It's the new fix. Coffee wasn't enough for me, so now I've got Hog Chocky on top. But you guys can get the same fix, the same addiction if you'd like, via the Dog and Gun website. And once again, use that code BOWHUNTER, all in caps locks, for $10 off of your next order. This week's episode is also brought to you by the legends over at Cayuga Broadheads. And recently, they have been getting quite the rap on the Joe Rogan podcast. Joe Rogan is a fellow bow hunter. He's done a lot for the bow hunting scene. And just recently, over the last few months, Cayuga Broadheads have been mentioned multiple times on the Joe Rogan Experience, which is his podcast. People talking about how impressed they are with the heads, how much they've got confidence in the heads, how they're going to continue to use them. And this was in the lead up to the American season as well. So people who were going to be using them in the American season. Also had Adam Greentree on, who was talking about how he's been loving those heads and using those heads. And so, I mean, the fact that they're being talked about, the fact that they're well known and getting well known all over the world, from really smart people, really good bow hunters in general, it kind of speaks volumes, I think, realistically, in what the product is. I use a mixture, so I'll even carry in my quiver at times a mixture of the pilot cuts and the Zots because they fly exactly the same. I roll with the 125s, and that just works well for me and my setup. And I'll continue using them ongoing. But you guys can actually get your hands on the Cayuga Broadheads as well and try them out. When you use the code BAB10, that will get you 10% off your next order. That's BAB10, and that will get you 10% off your next order at Cayuga Broadheads.
Hey there, and welcome to Becoming a Bow Hunter. I'm your host, Matty, and join me and our guests as we take the quality of meat back into our own hands. Searching the wild for free-ranged animals to harvest as ethically as we can. I interview a variety of specialists from the bow hunting community to help fast-track your journey as a bow hunter. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this chinwag on one of your favorite topics in the world, bow hunting.
What is up? Welcome back to another episode. Today I'm sitting down with Mr. Luke Griffin. Now, Luke is the man who was originally behind some of the online bow hunting forums, and I actually didn't even know this until we were midway through recording, as you're about to find out. But obviously that is a platform that was brought to the online space and helped to share a lot of stories and bits and pieces. You'll hear how he actually even turned it into a magazine with some of the crew along the way. And so there's a lot of stuff that Luke's done within the Australian bow hunting network in general, which I think is really cool, which we kind of get to unpack. So first of all, as a massive piece, like obviously that's huge for bringing us bow hunters together. On top of that, Luke is a firefighter out of Gladstone who is one of the owners of Braken Wear, and we delve deep into kind of talking about, well, firstly, how he came into Braken Wear, and then on top of that, talking about the camo side of things, like figuring out what your camo needs to look like, what's good camo, is there such thing as bad camo, how does it all work in an animal's eyes, are there things and protocols that you should and shouldn't do when it comes to using your camo, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot to unpack within this episode. Heap of really cool stories, and Luke himself is just an awesome dude, so I know you guys are going to love it. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Alrighty, guys, welcome back to another episode of Becoming a Bow Hunter. Sitting here with Mr. Luke Griffin. Welcome, Luke.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're very welcome. It was pretty interesting. We kind of came across each other online the other day. You sent me a message just saying, "Hey, mate, I've just put your RSS feed up," which is technical term for saying every time that you post a podcast now, it's going to go into one of the bow hunting forums. And I was incredibly grateful for that. So thank you again for doing that, because it's just another cool place for people to find the podcast. Something that I've put a lot of time and effort into, but also a lot of other people within Australia that's put a lot of time and effort into helping other bow hunters. So I think it's kind of cool that it's there. But we've just kind of been talking here in general about some of your beginnings within the bow hunting community and the stuff that you've done. So the forums was a big thing before, I guess, really Facebook and stuff like that. Like forums in general were huge back in the day, right? When the internet kind of first was kicking off, probably the first 10 years or so before Facebook and all of those things became very popular, people would jump on these blogs or these forums, and they would that was kind of like a social board that you could kind of communicate and talk and do your bits and pieces. And the bow hunting ones within Australia, I think the hunting ones within Australia, they were pretty rampant at one point, right? Like they were pretty popular.
Oh, massive. Absolutely massive, mate. And they were a really unique environment and a really cool, close-knit community as well, where, 20 years, just over 20 years now since, for example, I first started the Bow Hunters group forums. I personally have close mates that I met through them that I'm still in contact with. And I know of other guys that I'm still friends with that also have, best mates that they met through the forums, and they're lifelong friends, and that in itself, the hunting stuff aside, that aspect of it, can't be undervalued. Those friendships, the mateships that endure, through decades. And I've seen young teenagers who came onto the forums back in the day who were still wet behind the ears and still wanting to learn about hunting, and hadn't shot anything yet and were just getting into it. They're now 25, 30 plus years old, and they've got their own kids, and they're teaching their own kids how to hunt. So
pretty cool.
that community side of it, that growth side of it, of the community that was, is just I can't rate it any more high. It was just fantastic.
Yeah, and I feel it's a little bit unfortunate that we don't kind of have that same vibe. Not that it doesn't have the same vibe. Like I think hunting in general has that same vibe. Unfortunately, on Facebook communities, though, it gets lost, and there's a mixture of people that forget that there's another person sitting on the end of the keyboard that they're writing to, and there's a lot of douches saying bad things or just trying to make a joke, and it's like they're actually asking a real question, like they actually want some help here, and you're just trying to make fun of them, or you're just trying to make fun of the situation in general. And it really puts a bit of a dark light on, I think, on like what actually hunting can be and the mateship that can be built within the hunting community.
100%.
Yeah, it's
absolutely.
It's kind of disappointing to see that's where the Facebook communities are. To be honest, it's kind of what drove me to start a podcast instead, because I was like, well, I was listening to other podcasts, I'd always have more questions. I'd jump on the Facebook groups and just see that there was knobs posting shit just everywhere. I'm like, well, I don't want to just get bombarded by idiots. So it kind of made sense just to go out and do this, and then obviously help bring everyone else along. Hopefully just be an extra reference. And it has been. It's been really cool with that. But at the same time, so in regards to you starting into the forums, like what got you into the forums originally?
Well, it's funny you say, because like I've listened to a bunch of your podcasts since I came across. I haven't been into podcasts probably I have been for a couple of years now, but as we're talking off air before we started, I used to commute for work a couple of hours, and I used to put on podcasts to listen to. But I was big into the true crime podcasts.
They're cool.
And they used to intrigue me. They used to just, really help pass the time and whatever else, keep me awake. But since I came across yours and started listening to a whole bunch of them, and then, you asked me to come on and have a chat, I thought, well, you know what, I'm actually going to rip right back to the very first, not just have a look through and pick out which ones, piqued my interest. But so I actually went right back and listened to the very very first couple that you've ever posted, and it intrigued me and it got me really thinking, because I think that the reasons that underpin, and you just said it then, like your interest in starting the podcast are very, very similar to my motivations for starting the website and the forums, because ultimately I grew up, I was exposed, like my father was a bow hunter and started bow hunting before I was born.
Amazing.
So grew up shooting arrows and stuff, and going to the club and getting dragged along as a kid, and didn't hunt a lot sort of as a child, I suppose you could say, or even an early teenager, but just again through family circumstances and a few different things. But I really jumped into it when I guess you say got my independence, finished high school, moved away from home, got my license, was at uni, sort of my own person, and was able to, take myself hunting, if you like.
Definitely.
And I had this thirst for wanting to learn more. And at that time, this is late 90s, early 2000s, the internet was a new thing. And it was becoming known that this is a resource where we can go and find information. Definitely. And we can learn and we can educate ourselves. So, of course, I jump on, and back then it was like Alta Vista, not Google, and searching Alta Vista to try and find information about Australian bow hunting, and particularly, traits, habits, all these things about animals that we want to learn and we want to know, because obviously the better you know what it is you're hunting and about what you're hunting, the more success you should have. And all I could find was stuff about American game, and it just got me thinking, well, why isn't there stuff out there that's about Australian animals and game and about, bow hunting in Australia? So, mate, I just went, well, why not? I'm going to have a crack at this myself.
No way. That's sick. Actually, before we started recording, I didn't even know that you had started them. I thought you were just a member on them and you were helping out with it. Oh. That's incredible.
No. Yeah. So, mate, I just threw my hat in the ring basically and went, well, what the hell? I had very little, like I only got what was this? That was 90. I started uni in 98. That's when I got my first computer. Like I did word processing at school, as a 90s teenager.
Yeah.
And remember learning how to type on electric typewriters and stuff, but only really got my first computer when I went to uni, and I had to have one to do assignments and tutorials and stuff like this. So I had no idea about, computer skills or websites or coding or HTML or anything like that at all. And I just jumped in both feet and went, well, I'm going to learn by trial and error.
Yep.
And my favorite thing at the time, was like I'd go onto some other website and I'd, I don't know if many people are aware, but you can, through different browsers, you can look at the source coding behind a website. And I'd just go in there and I'd just scan it and try and pick out things that made sense to me, or that I'd try and go, I think this does that and that does that. And then I'd plug it into mine, or copy and paste it and try and make the specifics fit what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
And then I'd hit refresh, and it'd either be complete shit or it'd be close to it. And then I'd trial and error, refine it down from there. So
yeah,
it was an interesting learning curve, that's for sure.
Definitely, that was me when I very first started my nutrition business with my wife. Like, I was computer illiterate. I was horrible at using computers completely, and I just kind of had to learn. It was trial by fire.
Yep.
But yeah, I actually coach a lot of business owners now, and I'll be like, look, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like, just make it spin faster. See what other people are doing it, take it, use it as a concept, and continue to use it moving forward. And it's exactly what you did. Yeah.
Yep, 100%. And look, it's, 2007 was when I sort of, I suppose, I can blame my wife because she signed me up to Facebook back then. But that's when social media started becoming a thing. There was MySpace, but that wasn't really geared to anything to suit hunters or outdoors people. But then Facebook did come along sort of and became a thing here in 2006, 2007. And it wasn't really until, I think, you suppose the invention of groups on Facebook. And that way your communities found somewhere new to be.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing. It was just a shift,
Definitely.
And I think there's goods and bad, or pros and cons. I think there's some groups out there that are really they're run by people who really have their finger on the pulse, and they run them really well. That they monitor the content to make sure that what is posted in there and what is discussed in there is a quality representation of bow hunters and even in other hunting groups as well. But I'm also, unfortunately, there are some that aren't run so well. So it's a bit of a pros and cons.
Yeah, and I believe did you shut down the forum for a bit and then it only just restarted again recently, or was it going the whole time? It just went quiet.
So I mean, in one forum or another, it's run continually since I started it. Again, when we're speaking off air, I said that I lived overseas for a few years and bits and pieces. So there was actually a period there where I ran it pretty much for 10 years. And then when I was working and living overseas and a few life changes and stuff, I stepped away from it. And it was just before that time that the servers actually got hacked. And we pretty much lost 10 years worth of our data, all the posts and all the conversations and all the stories and all the pictures and all the videos and all the tutorials and everything, which is extremely disappointing, as you can imagine, because it was a phenomenal research. A phenomenal resource. And then, we basically started everything all over again. It wasn't too much after that I sort of stepped away from it to have a break and focus on other things in life.
Yep.
And it sort of it existed and evolved and rolled on and continued to be a really cool community and a cool resource. But there became a lot of bugs in the forum software. Yeah. And it just got to a point where the glitchiness of it was like a deterrent for people to want to get on there, because they'd write a post and hit submit and it just come up with gobbledygook code and stuff. And at that time, or during that period when I wasn't involved, so I didn't really have any input or anything. I couldn't really do anything to help. Yeah. So it was only 18 months or so ago now that it's just got to the point where I've gone, well, it's not a constructive, positive thing. It's not helping anybody anymore. So we've just got to sort of leave that as it is to the side. It can't be fixed. It can't be repaired. Let's just start all over again, start from scratch. So I just, jumped on and registered a new domain. The forums had changed name. At some point in my absence, they changed name to something different, but I've just put it up there under the old name. Yeah. And just, let's just go again. Why not?
It's just Bow Hunters Group of Australia, right?
Yeah, that's it.
So I actually came across it pretty much. It must have been I saw it within a Facebook group or something like that. I can't quite remember, but I've got a link that's I've got an automated system that sets up my emails that send out. Nice. I gave away a knife last year, I think it was, maybe the year before. No, I think it was last year. And with that, I set up an automation, and within the automation is a link to go and check out the Bow Hunters forums, which is your one. So that's hilarious. It kind of goes both ways. We both sent stuff to each other. Without realizing.
I remember that. I remember seeing that actually. It popped up. So there's the Facebook group and a Facebook page as well. And I started them. They've been running for a lot longer than this new iteration of the individual or the separate forum website itself. But there's actually, I think there's 2,500 people in the Facebook group, and which by no means is large or even moderate compared to some of the bow hunting groups that are out there. But it's a nice solid number of people, which gets good interaction. But primarily they're sort of there to help encourage people to come to the forums.
Awesome. Yeah.
Because part of what I've had a lot of feedback on was that people like the fact that we have our own niche, our own little corner of the world, away from social media, and away from the, I guess you'd say some people don't like the overreach of the censorship that seems to be a lot more foreboding now and a lot more enforced on hunting pastimes on social media.
Definitely, yeah. The things get blocked and censored and whatever else. And then there's also the old boys, right? Like, what's a Facebook? And so
to have them
Yeah.
have the access to it. It's quite nice.
Oh, mate, but mind you, like, you know, it's fantastic. I get to keep in touch with Dave Whiting and Dave Pender and,
Yeah.
you know, guys like that. Ian Fenton, you know, Ian Fenton's on Facebook, for goodness sake, you know, like I had a lot to do with Ian Fenton when we kicked off the Australian Archery Hall of Fame. I was on the board of directors for that, and I did all the website design and that sort of stuff. So, you know, to be able to keep in touch with Ian through Facebook is really cool. You know, guys who's, you know, definitely the upper echelon of age brackets within bow hunting in Australia.
Definitely,
you know. So it's pretty wild. And then, you know, see how Dave Whiting's going and Darryl Bolger, and, you know, so, you know, the old boys are there.
Yeah, they definitely are. No, they're doing well. Yeah, I'm pretty bummed. I'm no longer going down to the Trophy Takers event this year. I was looking forward to meeting some of those guys down there, but unfortunately, just some work stuff's come up, and so I can't. I've got too much to go on. I'm also going overseas in like the month's time, so I'm kind of working towards some pretty big deadlines, which means that unfortunately I get to miss out on this year. But I'll just have to make it happen again soon and try to get them on some recordings, because Dave Whiting and I were going to catch up when he was passing through Brisbane, because he took like a good 6-month hiatus where he was hunting all around Queensland, and I think he went up to Northern Territory as well on his treks. But it just didn't work out the dates when he was coming through. Actually, I think he ended up going home early or something. I can't remember what happened, but essentially we missed out on the opportunity, which was unfortunate. So I'm definitely I've got a big soft spot for all of those guys, and I really want to get a lot of their recordings out as much as possible, right? Like I honestly think they've just got so much knowledge and so many awesome stories that would be great just to have as like a stockpile that we could have somewhere. And whether I can do that on the podcast and do a little bit of justice for some of their stories, or if it's somewhere else, I don't know. But yeah, I think that's a good idea.
It's one of the things I've actually been doing since I restarted the forums, as part of the forums back in 2000 sorry, let me think. It would have been, wasn't long after I moved to Shanghai. So it was 2008-9 when we kicked off the Bowhunting Australia magazine, you know, and I had Darryl, for example, has written us an article on hunting red deer, you know, so I've been going back through those articles and extracting them from the software and converting them into images of the magazine pages and posting them up on the forums.
Yeah, amazing.
So, you know, make that digital online presence of those articles from those guys, you know.
Yeah, it's so interesting because often when I'm interviewing even just a lot of the younger guys, like the guys you're talking about before, the 30-year-olds, they'll often say, I grew up reading articles, and then I remember reading stories from this person and stories from this person.
Absolutely.
And stuff. And it's just like, it's where I learnt my knowledge, because there wasn't anything like what we've got access to now. Yeah. And so tell us a bit more about the magazine, how that kind of came to fruition and what happened there.
So it's actually, we had this, you know, by that stage we were getting not far off 10 years worth. It was probably 8 years worth of, I guess you could say, resource. And you know, we'd seen all these great stories and articles, and, you know, we had all these members that had so much knowledge and information that, you know, the resource was phenomenal. And we had as part of the forum, there was, you know, it's a bit like the Facebook groups. You had administrators and moderators. So we decided we'd get together sort of as a management group, and we'd go on a hunt. So Mick Baker from Trophy Bowhunts Australia was one of the moderators, and he invited us up to a block at Charters Towers for to hunt the chiddle and the boars on the bass hold up there.
Yep.
So we're up there. I think we had 10 days up there, and, you know, as you do, you talk, you know, a whole lot of bullshit and sit around the fire and whatever else. And one of the moderators, his name's Joel Percullis. He's mate, one of the tallest blokes I've ever met. But he's just you know, I have a 26.5-inch draw, and his is about 37. So I'm a bit jealous.
Old stretch.
But Jolie's come up with this idea that we should do this journal. You know, he said, well, why don't we do this annual journal of all the articles and stuff and all the stories and stuff that people post up on the forums? And so, there was myself, Antonio Lara, and Scotty Goodwin, and Mick Baker, and Paul Ray, and we were all there, and we threw this idea around and talked about it, and in the end, we've just gone, well, why don't we just make it a magazine? We just do it once a year.
Mm-hmm.
We make it a really big, thick volume of a magazine, and we've got these people we can approach to say, oh look, for example, as I just said, Daryl, mate, would you mind writing an article about hunting red deer? And like I said before, Troy Reynolds, can you write us an article about hunting rooster? And Paul did us an article on tradbow and stuff like that. So we sort of just talk to these guys who had this infinite knowledge on these areas, and Antonio was very good at he just had this brain for being able to remember, oh, that guy Mick, he has really knowledgeable about GPS and navigation and stuff like that. So I'll talk to Mick about writing an article about navigation and that sort of stuff, and it just went from there. So Antonio and I sort of steered it, I suppose you could say, and I did the I think it was the first 3 editions. Like 2.5, 3 editions worth. I think Doug, or was it Tony? I can't remember now. I have to apologise to the boys. Either Doug or Tony came on partway through the 3rd edition and started helping out with the graphic design and stuff. But prior to that, I did all the graphic design and all the ads and every single article and all that sort of business and stuff like that. And it was just a super, quality. Not quality. It was a really good experience with regards to the contribution from the members of the community.
Definitely. And so essentially you're taking articles from the forums and turning them into pages of the magazine to some extent?
Oh, not quite. I guess not quite as copy and paste as that. It was more so, like we'd seen guys put up, stories or reports about their hunts or stuff like that, or even just advice they'd given. And and like I said, like Antonio just had this knack for remembering, that bloke, I remember he posted this about this, about this. So I might ask him if he could do us an article on such and such, on making, Paul Mayle was a guy around at the time. He was a knife maker.
Yep.
So he wrote us this, I think it ended up being 6 or 8 pages worth of magazine on making knives, and sharpening and stuff. So it was sort of like recognizing these guys and the knowledge and experience that they had, and just saying, hey, can we tap into that a little bit more? And would you be able to help, write us something and we can put this together and make it a quality publication for people that have it stick on the shelf,
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I'm actually always pretty impressed with like the writing capabilities of everyone that submits to the hunting magazines. Like I remember years ago, probably would have been, I don't know, maybe when I was just 12, 13, 14, looking at a few hunting magazines out at my cousin's place up at Springshaw, and reading it and just being like, whoa, this is like so in detail about what's going on. And it was very like vivid. You could kind of go on the journey with them. It was really cool. And
yeah, absolutely.
I was always very impressed by the level of detail that people were able to dictate through their writing. Not that you wouldn't expect everyone to be able to write, but it's like, I don't know, maybe at that point in time I had the wrong picture in my head of who was going to be writing these articles. I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. I think for me too. Like I said, I think I said, I don't know if I said it on air or not, but my father was a bow hunter, and the Archery Action magazine through the ABA, it was always on the table. It was always the latest edition on the table, and I don't know how many, I'd probably say hundreds of those I've read cover to cover, and countless times, and I'm quite certain I've got a big old wooden box out the back, full of them now. Yeah. It's probably got 300 editions of this magazine in it, and the same thing, reading articles by, Cole Graham, who used to make Ribtech broadheads, for example, or Alan Davies, who used to make what's now called Tuskers. They were called Davies broadheads back in the day. Yeah. The same thing, you grew up reading these things, and they just, that knowledge that you get to soak in through the magazines or the articles, and you get to keep them, and go back and, rather. Whereas I find now I'll read stuff online, and you know, you go, oh, that's really good, but then it gets lost in the mist, you know.
Unless
It
you're gonna
gets
save it
lost in
somewhere.
the jungle for the trees, so to speak, you know.
Definitely. Yeah, it's definitely it's an interesting system, the whole online space, because obviously it is just so fast moving. I think it's something like I don't even know, but so many years worth of content gets uploaded every single day. So
Yeah.
you're never going to be able to explore it all. So it's just about finding the stuff you like the best. I mean, I had that shiny object issue when I was stepping into business. And I was trying to figure out who to follow and what to learn from, and you'd end up trying to follow from 10 or 15 different people, and you end up just going in circles. Versus now, I've kind of single point focus, very narrowed down with my niche, and do that a lot in general. And I kind of thought the same thing within this bow hunting, and it's been very interesting to kind of watch like how the podcast is growing, because it's really niched right down into a space of bow hunting, and bow hunting only is essentially what we talk about here. And it's got quite an avid following because of that situation. Like, it's kind of cool, because I guess really it is a good resource to most extent, I guess, for right now. So I don't know. I'm still enjoying doing it, and I'll continue doing it for as long as I do like doing it. So yeah.
Oh, that's it, mate. And that was the thing, you know. Like, if you're passionate about what you're doing, it doesn't become a chore.
No.
And it shines through. You know, I can remember, and you know, again, as I said before we started recording, I was a phys ed science teacher for 10 years, and I decided to move on from that career because I wasn't passionate about it as I needed to be for what I had to put into it for the kids to get out of it. And I remembered for a fact, I went from one grade 11 physics class to my grade 12 physics class, and the difference in the passion that my grade 12 teacher had to my grade 11 teacher was so remarkably different. I went from nearly failing to getting the highest grades in the school.
Definitely, yeah.
You know, just because that teacher was passionate about what they were delivering.
Definitely.
And I always said to myself, if I'm not putting that in to my job that these kids deserve, then it is time for me to find a new career. And the same thing, you know, if you've got that passion for something, you know, as they say, you know, whatever, do what you're passionate about, you never work a day in your life, you know, so it shines through. And I can 100% say, you know, every single episode of your podcast I've listened to, you can pick that up inevitably in that just those. It's hard to put words to it, you know. The same thing when someone turns around and says, "What is it about hunting? Why do you go hunting?" And you go, "Oh, it's." You know, it's that unspoken, you know what it is, but you struggle to put words into it, and that comes through your podcast, and it's really, you know, I find it really what's the word, contagious, you know. So I can certainly appreciate, and I can see that it is a growing entity, and it would be, as you know, it definitely is a popular podcast because you certainly put out there that contagious vibe for the thing that you're super passionate about, and that's really cool.
Yeah, thanks, mate. I appreciate that. And so with your background in hunting with your dad, like, when did he actually start you on was he a bow hunter? You said he was on trad bow, right?
No, funny, not funny story, but yeah, way back in the day, I think I've got one or two old photos of Dad actually shooting recurves. But I always knew Dad as a compound shooter.
Okay. Yeah.
And he's actually still got the Martin Warthog bow that he used to shoot when I was growing up. And I've since, well, years ago now, but I had the opportunity to buy one very similar, just a slightly different shade of timber. So I've got, for all intents and purposes, the same bow.
That's awesome.
But no, so I'm a 79 model, and it was in the mid 70s there where my parents were living in Mount Isa, and that's when my dad got into bow hunting, and he and his next door neighbour, I think a guy by the name of Johnny Gage, they actually started the Mount Isa Bow Hunters Club, which still runs.
Yeah,
I think it's the oldest or second oldest club in ABA club in Queensland. Dad was the treasurer and secretary, and you know, all that sort of stuff for many years until we moved away. So I was exposed to it. We moved to central Queensland thereafter, not far from your stomping grounds. Actually, I was we lived out at Mara for the the early 80s.
Yep.
So not too far from Springshaw, and and yeah, so Dad was part of the club there as well, and yeah, I remember getting dragged around the club and put on people's shoulders when I was, tired and whingy and wouldn't walk anymore, stuff like that, and too young at that stage to really be taken hunting. And then from there, we actually moved in the mid-'80s, and where we moved to didn't really have a lot of game to hunt. So Dad didn't really do any hunting, and that was sort of my older primary school, younger teenage years. And then it was sort of, I was about 14, we moved to Bundy. Yep. And here in Bundy, the hunting is not that flash either. There's too many cane paddocks and there's too many guys with dogs chasing the pigs and stuff like that. And so, but did get into the club scene here a little bit and saved up my own money from a part-time job, bought myself my first compound and stuff like that. So mostly did that, shooting in the backyard and whacking cane toads around the house yard at night and stuff like that, and whatever else. And then yeah, sort of flew the coop straight after high school, and that's when I just got into it full on, and like full on. It was just, as you can appreciate it. And then again, as you said, as one of the first episodes of yours I listened to, it was just all consuming. Live, eat, breathe, think about it. When's my next hunt? What? And that's the sound that drove me to start the website. Just that thirst for learning. I'm thinking about this. What about pigs? What about deer? And what about goats? What about foxes? And so yeah, that's the gist of it, I suppose.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I actually went and did a 3D shoot on the weekend, and nice. I was thinking about this in general because it was something that I wanted to talk about on the podcast, because I think shooting at 3D targets is so valuable for being out in the bush. And like, if you do the sport of 3D, when you're gauging the distance without a rangefinder, that's obviously a very valuable lesson to learn within itself. And they'll typically try to set it up over your dead ground and bits and pieces, so you really have to kind of figure it out pretty well. But the other thing is, and we were talking about it because I was on the we were doing the rounds with a few other people who were purely just 3D shooters. There was one who was a hunter, one was a purely 3D shooter, and then there was me and my mate and his son. And we were talking about with my mate's son, we're like, look, where the 3D target has the circles, that's not where you want to be aiming. Like, it's good for the sport and it's gamifying what we're doing here within 3D or within bow hunting with 3D targets. But essentially, it's definitely not where your kill shots are, and where you want to be aiming is actually in here. And it was not that it necessarily needs to be said all the time, but I think really it is an important thing to also state, because the whole act of 3D is to gamify what we do versus going out and making an actual ethical kill. The difference is it can be very, very different. Like, to watch where some of those circles where I was like, oh my gosh, that's like a complete gut shot if you were to go back there.
Yeah. Oh, and look, and I don't want it to sound like a cop out, because I don't. Again, life circumstances at the moment, I don't get the opportunity to go to the club here very often. It's also it's a massive sort of effort, with probably 45 minutes to an hour at least to drive and whatever else. But I always try and go out, and I think it's. I used to live not far from Grange Bowman there at Albany Creek in Brisbane.
Yeah,
and I used to go down pretty much every day after uni. I was down there 5-6 days a week, and I would shoot hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of arrows, and it was always with the focus of practicing for hunting. Always. Yeah. I've never been a target archer. I enjoy the camaraderie and the social side of going around with some guys and shooting, but my approach personally has always been, is it a good hunting shot?
Definitely. I actually spent the whole weekend just shooting for hunting. I said to them from the start, when we started walking with them, like, hey, I'm practicing my hunting, I'm not practicing my 3D. And they were like, yeah, that's fine. It. Like, they had no worries with that.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. You're all, it's interesting definition that, in essence, archery is not a sport. You're not actually competing against someone. You're only competing against yourself, because what you do doesn't affect what I do. It's like sprinting technically is not a sport, it's a discipline, because I run as fast as I can in my lane, but you do the same over there. I can't shoulder barge you. I can't actually directly affect you, not like tennis or rugby league or whatever, but I'm still doing what I'm doing as best as I possibly can, the way I need to do it to achieve my goals. And that's the awesome thing with, shooting ABA rounds or whatever, is that you can, you have your juniors and your cubs and whatever else, but you can still have those guys who are just, they're there doing this, they're doing it the way they want to do it to get the enjoyment out of it that they want to get.
Definitely.
And be that open freestyle, be that barebow compound, be that recurve, be that, someone with the bells and whistles just practicing for hunting. It's one of the most awesome things about the sport of target archery or field archery.
Definitely. Yeah, I think also just being in that group scenario, like those guys that I'd never met before that we're walking around with, and all of a sudden you shoot in front of a group of 4 or 5 people. Like, it's a good way to kind of have a pressure shot right before you. And
Absolutely.
That's very similar to the adrenaline dump you're getting when you're actually in front of an animal. Same, but different. But at the same time, it's a great way to put yourself through the ringer a little bit and see how you do act under fire.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so, growing up, you said your first hunting was kind of when you were in Bundy. Is that correct?
Well, before we moved to Bundy, we lived out in the Darling Downs and used to muck about on mates' properties, but more so with rifles and whatnot than bows out there, just because there wasn't really anyone else around at all that was into it.
Yep.
So that's realistically probably my first exposure as a kid with a bit of autonomy, So by the time we were 10, 12, 13 and whatnot, we were, go to a mate's property. He could drive. So, we'd jump in the ute or whatever. And, we'd go for a drive and look for bits and pieces to see what we could get. But then, later on, mostly after I left Bundy and started uni and was able to line up some properties. And yes, like I said, sort of had that, I guess you'd say, that autonomy. Not only putting the time in, a bit of funds too, I suppose. A bit more coin doesn't hurt things.
Definitely.
and sort of that's when I really, really jumped into it full on.
Yeah, especially if you're hunting, like, we'll get to this, but if you're hunting pigs solely, like, they are very good at breaking arrows compared to shooting through deer or whatever else. And so it does become a very
100%.
expensive sport very quickly if you're purely just after those animals. So, like,
we literally just got some messages this evening from Brenton Mitchell, who's been out hunting, and he said we pretty much just ran out of arrows and broadheads. He's had a good weekend, a good few days anyway. So he's like, we shot a stupid number of pigs, but we just ran out of arrows because they kept breaking them. So we had to get a bit more choosy with what we're actually shooting,
Definitely. It's always interesting when someone says to me, like, bring a lot of arrows. I'm like, okay, how many are we talking? Like, is 2,000 enough arrows or not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, like, you kind of bread and butter was always pigs to start with?
Goats and pigs, yeah, but did a lot of hunting in the early days down around Tenterfield and New England. New England is just my favourite place in the entire East Coast. It's just, I don't know, it's got the mixture of everything there, and I don't know, not that I love the West. I love the flat plains. I love lazy brown rivers and stuff. And these days that is my bread and butter because it's what I've got access to as well. But it's not that far away. Whereas it's a good 8-hour drive to the border or more from here. So getting down to the New England areas is more of a challenge logistically these days than anything. But yeah, hunting the goats down in the New England area and going down to Tenterfield or further down. Excuse me, mate. Further down, back in the forum days with group hunts down at Wellington near Dubbo there, and different properties that through the near the Severn area, Glen Innes and that sort of space.
Definitely.
But yeah.
Yeah, I got a few mates and a few people I talk to quite a lot that kind of hunt down that area, and they love it. They rave about it. And I think there's a state forest. I think it's close to Armidale. Maybe it might be closer to Tamworth. I'm not sure. Called the Sticks, I believe it is, and that's a
Sticks. Okay,
I think that's what it's called. And that's apparently very, very good for.
Yeah, right.
I'm pretty sure that's what it was. It might be something. It might be a completely different name. I might be wrong there, but it's one of the state forests that you can book into, and apparently it's gotten really good in the last few years, as most places have, right, with all the rain and the stopping of shooting that happened kind of over COVID, and so the mass growth that we kind of saw in animal populations. It's been some great years of hunting. I really hope that the culls don't take off too much.
For sure. Have you got your R license?
No, I actually don't. It's not something I've got into yet. I'm not against it, that's for sure. I just also, as you know, like as you get busier and older and you get kids and whatever else, you become pretty limited. So I'm usually, when I'm going for a hunting trip, it's somewhere where I already know, like, and trust.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And like, have you got one or two kids?
I got two little daughters. Yeah,
two. Yeah. It's sort of, how old are they?
3.5, or just about 4 and 1.5. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, right. Yeah. No, I get you.
So in the thick of it. Yeah. I've been very lucky though this year. Like pretty much, not quite, but pretty much gone away monthly. My wife's been a complete trooper.
Nice.
I kind of said to her at the start of the year, like, look, this is what I'd love to have happen. I don't know how that looks and how I can best support you to make it happen as well. Like obviously trying to get you to have your time. But how do we go about that? And I think realistically, just the fact that we've got a good communication, like open communication between us, we kind of know what we're both working towards, and we understand what also helps to fill each of our cups individually. And so we're kind of like, okay, well, this is important to you. It's something that's obviously working well for you. So let's keep going with it. So that's been awesome to have that support from her from word go as well.
Yeah, I find it challenging because of my work roster. You know, like I said earlier, we do 2 days, 2 nights, have 4 off. But the way that rolls out, it advances 1 day each week. So I think it's something like 2 weekends in 8 are not affected by a shift.
Yeah, wow.
You know, so when you try and line that up with, sort of regular mates who do 9 to 5, 5 day a week jobs, it's, it becomes really challenging to not only just, it becomes hard to line up a weekend you're off, but also then a weekend that they're off, and the weekend that suits family life as well. So, it's as it is. And my girls are almost 6 and almost 9. So there's that importance of the formative years of family time and stuff too that I've got to be very conscious of. And, like, for example, I've just come off night shift this morning. So I worked Sunday, that's a family day, typically weekend, but I was away. I worked Monday. So, I work from 8 in the morning till 6 at night on day shift. So by the time I get home, it's dinner's, bath, bed, and then turn around and have the next day off for the swing day and then get ready for night shift. But, my wife's a teacher, so she'll come home. She only gets home at like 5:30 of an afternoon, whereas I have to leave at 5:30 to get to work to start by 6. So it's literally hello, goodbye for that day. I don't see them the next morning because they've already gone to school by the time we get home. So the next afternoon it's hello, goodbye. So it just makes it hard then when you do get a free weekend to go, oh, okay, well, my mate's free, so I'm free, we'll go hunting, But, it's just a period of life for now.
Definitely.
And,
and I think it's important stage of life, right? Like you never get these years back.
Absolutely.
I've heard a few quotes just recently. It's something like by the time they're 12, you would have spent a quarter of the time that you're ever going to get to spend with them. Or no, maybe I think by the time they're 18, you would have spent 3/4 of the time that you will ever have spent with your child. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. I'm just excited because my girls are excited. They want to come out hunting with me now. Like I just bought a new pack, and my daughter's like, I'm gonna sit in the pack, Dad, and we're gonna go up and we're gonna shoot a hare. I'm like, okay, let's do it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we'll see how it all unfolds and if it can come together. And I took her for a walk the other day, just in we've got this little local reserve, and I said to her, Mads, we're gonna practice as if there is a deer up ahead, okay? And she's like, okay, yeah, let's do it. And I said, well, you have to be really quiet, so you can't talk, okay? You can whisper, to Dad, but you can't say much at all. And she's like, okay. I'm like, hey, Dad. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, okay, so the deer, it's 150 meters away. We're just going to start walking up very slowly. And whenever Daddy stops, it's just because it's looking at us or it's just looking around. And she's like, okay. She actually did really well. I'm like, well, this would be interesting to see what happens when it's a real deer.
That's awesome. Yeah, good stuff.
You got to prep them though, right?
No, absolutely. I've really enjoyed the hunts back in the day where my young fella was still a young fella, he's 26 now, but, being able to take him out and go hunting as well, and, built his first, made a little self bow for his first bow and that sort of thing. And then bought him a Browning Micromidas compound and whatever else. And, we actually did a big trip down south and dragged him along down there, and same thing, caught up with, guys from the forums and stayed at Antonio's at Wollongong there, and went out to Pego's place and hunted goats out there, and caught up with Andrew Morrow, and just did these big trips, and Scott and Jody Goodwin, who are legends on the forum and whatnot, and just these big trips, and he just tagged along, and we got him in on rabbits and goats and stuff like that, and just the best memories,
Just
like really
loved
awesome
it,
times.
Yeah, it's so cool. And I think it's just really, you have so many experiences that you get to have with your kids, but then when you're going out and you're actually hunting, you're adventuring, like you're constantly taking them on these adventures that are sticky in their heads. Like, I don't know, it's not necessarily a normal thing anymore. It's or it's not a common thing anymore. It's definitely a normal act, but it's not a common thing that happens for many kids. Yeah. So for them to be able to go back and talk with their friends, guess what I did on the weekend? Like, it's very, very different, and also attracts a lot of attention for them, I guess, to some extent. Maybe that's a good or a bad thing, I'm not sure, but it gives them stories to tell, which I think is awesome. Things that stick with
absolutely. And I think it's the start of that foundation of connection with understanding life and the life cycles, and in certain aspects, meat and food, but also just the role of responsibility of people to manage, what we do hunt, which is invasive pests and that side of it too, but also just that up close exposure to nature, and taking that time to stop and talk about, not just the things about the game that we're hunting, but the other cool stuff that you see when you're out in the scrub, and that stuff too really gives them that love and appreciation for the bush.
Definitely.
Which is what I was exposed to as a kid, and that's why it's just in me now, and it's part of me,
Yeah, it was interesting. My daughter was actually playing with her toys the other day in front of me, and she said something about hurting one of the animals. I was like, "Oh, what are you doing there, Mads?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm just playing, Dad. I'm just hurt this animal because I went out and I can't remember what she said. Something like I was going to hunt it, but I just hurt it in the end, and that was it." And I'm like, no. I'm like, that's not what we do. I'm like, had to sit her down. I'm like, look, the ethics of what we do, like when we hunt animals, we're not going out to ever hurt them. We're going out to actually make sure that we're doing an ethical kill. And I kind of explained the whole process to her.
Absolutely.
And by the end of it, she was like, "Oh, okay, thank you." Like, wow, that's really. You could see like the cogs were turning, and she kind of took it on board and was like, "Okay, I understand that now," which was kind of it's also a pretty powerful thing, because I think if you don't if you don't tackle those things head on when they arise to start with, then that's when issues potentially do start to happen later down track with. I don't know.
That's right.
Whatever it might
be. And they
be.
become those, what we call it, I don't say teacher speak, so it's not me anymore, but a teachable moment. You know what I mean? It's that little window where you go, here's an opportunity to speak to that, and we can talk about it, and the kid or person is going to walk away with a deeper understanding of whatever it is, or some information that might change their opinion a little bit or whatever. But just that, particularly with kids, those grasping those little teachable moments, and it's this accumulation effect. One moment here, one moment there, one moment there, and the next thing you know, you've got and you've had all these opportunities where you've helped that kid to think either more deeply about what it is or in a different way, and you help them become more well-rounded or more informed or more knowledgeable. So then when they're talking with their friends about something and it comes up, or you've helped with these teachable moments, and they go, well, actually, did you know, blah blah blah, or whatever. They've just got this accumulation of understanding or knowledge.
Definitely, you build their own ethical and moral compasses as well along that time, because of kind of what you've helped to deliver. And so, have you hunted overseas before, or it's all been Australian hunting?
I haven't, unfortunately.
You're not tying it on this trip, are you? I was going to say, why don't you chuck a caribou or something in there real quick?
Yeah, I'd be the one who was shot. No, when I was in Shanghai, I actually had the opportunity that we were trying to line up. It was all lining up. All the dominoes were starting to fall, to go to Mongolia to hunt ibex, and there was a guy through the forum actually, and I'm really kicking myself. I can't remember his name because he's a really top bloke. And we'd lined up the place, the transport. We'd even worked out chopper access and everything. And I can't remember how. I think it was through either someone he knew through work or something like that. But yeah, it was. I was so excited, but in the end, I can't remember what it was now. But something happened and the ass fell out of it, and I was just I was just completely and utterly devastated because this trip of a lifetime that was through the guys he knew was not going to cost me a second mortgage. Was going to be a very likely thing to happen, and all of a sudden it's just sort of got pulled out from under us. It was like, I was super bummed. And
definitely.
And and the opportunity to hunt overseas hasn't really come up since, but at the same time, I haven't, it's, you look at the access that we have to, for example, to hunt in New Zealand these days, and the opportunities with outfitters and the travel. COVID stuffed us for a few years with it and stuff, but, I didn't, and I haven't made that effort to make it happen.
Definitely haven't pursued as much. And I mean, at the same time, we're also spoilt with what we do have here.
Absolutely.
Within Australia. And like you said, within an 8-hour drive, you can go to your favorite hunting spot within all of Australia versus going through the customs and doing everything else you need to be able to do, going to a new country that you don't necessarily know, especially if you're going to take the free route and kind of guide yourself. The extra study and whatever else. And I think that's also the excitement of it. But I can understand why it potentially hasn't happened for you as well.
Yeah, and again, life circumstances. I changed careers, and I had a whole lot of goals and stuff I had to do with regards to my new career and the rank promotions and progressions and stuff within, but then also, goals with stuff that I suppose you could say is elective within the career as well, that I wanted to do and achieve. And then, we started a new family, and my wife had started a new job at the same time I started my new career. So, moving back from overseas and, a whole bunch of just stuff, but, there's a cool thing about the trip that we've got coming up, basically just short of a month in Canada and just over a month in the US, but predominantly the Canadian side of things where, my wife's family background is Canadian, so she's got uncles and aunties and cousins there. So, that's going to be really interesting to talk to them about their hunting pursuits and backgrounds and
Definitely.
And the culture and everything over there. And then my mate Rog, who's from Colorado, the week before I land, he's got his elk tickets, so he's hunting elk the week before I get there, and I'm spewing because if I'd known earlier, we could have arranged everything to be there that week, and I could have tagged along, So but that was when he drew his tags, and that's when he's got to go. So
of course.
But the same thing. Like it's always, I think, it's good. You've got guys out there like Benny Selleris who are helping people. And they've got contacts, and he can ring guys that he knows, outfitters that can just make everything accessible for us.
Definitely.
Whereas I think that's the biggest hurdle, that access to the contacts, to the logistics of it all. You know?
Actually, I've recorded an episode that will come out by the time this one comes out, but it's not been released yet. It's still got a few weeks yet before it will come out. But with Benny, and it was a great little podcast. And we kind of just touched on what silent pursuits can do for everyone as well. So good little reminder.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I see Benny was the moderator on the forum for a number of years as well back in the day. So it's all little big circles.
All very connected, yeah, exactly.
It's all a big love in, mate.
And that's the thing. It's a very, very small world, really, for the Australian bow hunting community. It's quite a tight-knit community. And I was talking about this. I don't know if I was talking with Ben or not, but saying, like, how many bow hunters do you reckon there actually are within Australia? Like 20, 30,000, maybe max?
Gee, it's...
Like, what sort of numbers were you getting on the forums back in the day? When was it at its peak?
We were total registered users. See, it was different. Well, back in the day, what I've done now is I've locked it down, so you can't view the forums unless you're registered now. And I've done that just because of the nature of the how sort of touchy the environment is. Whereas back in the day, it was open, so you didn't have to register to be able to read and access stuff. But having said that, we were pushing up 10,000 people registered.
Yeah.
And we were cranking 10 million hits a month.
Wow.
So you do the disparity there, and you go, well, there's a hell of a lot of people who are looking and not registering.
Definitely.
And that's fine, because the whole drive of it was that it was a resource. So if people were just happy to look and read or watch clips or whatever and glean their information and learn stuff, then the resource is still doing what the resource is designed to do. But these days, mate, I wouldn't have a clue, to be honest. It's so hard. You see some of the groups on Facebook with 15,000 people in a bow hunting group, but then you don't know if they could be from anywhere in the
New
world.
Zealand or exactly, somewhere else, trying to get information on the Australian hunting. But yeah,
and that's part of the awesome side of it too. Like it's much more of a diverse exposure or opportunity to interact with people from other backgrounds and cultures of hunting. It's one of the things I'm a little bit I won't say careful with, but through Braken Wear, we've got customers around the world that buy our stuff, and they might share footage or video and stuff that then I'll repost on Instagram, for example. And sometimes I put a thing up basically reminding people, hey, just because you don't find this culturally acceptable the way you hunt doesn't mean it's not culturally acceptable or legal where this hunting is done.
Definitely.
As long as it's humane and as long as it's ethical, but then ethics is a whole other debate. But as long as it's humane, let's not jump on whoever it is, or let's just check ourselves to make sure that we are still respecting this hunter for the hunting that they're doing and the game that they're treating in the right manner.
Definitely. Yeah, one of the guys I had on just recently, he was on the trip that we did down south. He was the videographer that came over from New Zealand, and he was saying that he spent some time, I think it was over in Iceland or Greenland, and the Inuits there were hunting the seals. And he was like, oh my God, like they're hunting seals right in front of me. Like kind of had to second guess himself a little bit while he's right there. Or not second guess it, but he was like questioning it in general. And then he got talking about how he was a hunter, and he's like, yeah, we hunt the deer. And they're like, you hunt the deer? Like, that is just so odd. That's so bizarre. How could you do that? They're so cute. Like, just funny that the concept changes from both angles just because it's not the common thing for around where you are.
Yeah, that's it. And there was one guy who, I'm not sure which group on Facebook it is that I'm in, but he posted up some stuff there a little while back of harvesting a narwhal. And you're just like, they're sea unicorns. You can't shoot them. My girls would be gutted.
Yeah.
But again, that's the reality of their culture and the reality of existence where they live. If it's done humanely and legally, then I'm not going to sit here and judge the person for doing that.
No, yeah.
But then again, through social media, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have exposure to it. I wouldn't have that opportunity to learn and embrace and be immersed in what it is that his culture does, and then be able to appreciate that from a hunter's perspective.
Definitely. You mentioned Braken Wear before, just a little bit. How did that kind of come to fruition for you? I know we kind of talked about the story beforehand, but just for the listeners, your business is Braken Wear. Do you want to talk about it a little bit more?
Oh, sure. So Braken Wear, as it exists now, I think it's, I worked before, it's coming up almost 3 years now that we've owned the business. So I like to say that Braken Wear we came to own it through two purchases. One was some of the gear, and the second one was the business. I came across it because I needed to buy a bit of gear to go hunting with. And again, another legend that I know and I met through the forums, who's not actually a relation, but of the same name. So Howie Griffin was a bow hunter that anybody around the 90s would have seen his DVDs out or known of him knocking about the places. He's ex-Bathurst bow hunter. I think he lives on the mid-coast New South Wales now. But so Howie was using Braken Wear, and I'd seen it on social media and stuff, and I'm like, well, I need to get a bit of this kit, and it was just a face failer because I'd lost the one that I was been using, and I thought, oh, this gear looks pretty bloody good, so I might grab a bit of this. So I looked them up, and I ended up purchasing just the face fail initially. and it arrived, and I was like, this is actually pretty bloody cool shit, So I thought, well, I'm going to get a few more bits and pieces and whatever else, and then I thought, well, I'll look these guys up on social media and stuff, and as I sort of said to you before we started recording, I came across the fact that a guy I knew through the forums and who'd written some articles and stuff for us for the magazine, Troy Reynolds, had actually started the business with another fellow, Ben, and I was like, oh, okay, right, cool. Well, that says a lot to me to start with because they're both good hunters. And I looking through their socials, I just happened to come across a post that had the business advertised as for sale. So my best mate who lives 3 doors up the road conveniently, and I had been talking about a side gig or something that we might do. He's sort of grew up in outdoors and stuff like that as well. More of a rifle hunter than a bow hunter, but has shot game with the bow and stuff. And so we sent the boys an email, and they got back to us. And then Bernie did his he's got a sort of a background in business and that. So I just sort of let him run that side of it, I suppose you could say, and do the due diligence. And we talked with Ben and Troy for probably a good 3.5, 4 months. And then in the end, we ended up deciding we wanted to buy the business and try and carry on what they'd started.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so how long had they been running for before you guys brought in?
They started the process of the business in 2012. So a long time ago, really.
Yep.
And that was from an idea inception to, what's the word I'm looking for? Research and development of patterns and garments and field trials of different clothes and technical fabrics and getting items made and then getting people to wear them and giving feedback and making adjustments and, even traveling over and, speaking to manufacturers and doing trade shows and all that sort of stuff. Come out with logos and garment designs and getting pattern makers to actually make the pattern. And by pattern maker, I don't mean the camo design, but the actual templates you use to make the garments.
Yeah.
All that sort of stuff. So, they've done. They did a tremendous amount of work and really, really solid stuff with the design and the business and stuff. So
definitely, yeah. And like you said, you kind of see a lot of people wearing it, especially in the old magazines. Like I definitely saw a lot of people wearing the Braken Wear gear in general. And so, do you know if they came up with the print themselves, or was it a print that was available for purchase, essentially, that they took on?
So, I know Ben. Well, they designed it together, but Ben has a background in graphic design and what do you say? The skills on the computer to create it. It's actually created in it's not Adobe Photoshop. It is escaping me at the moment. Adobe Illustrator.
Yep.
Which is primarily a graphic design software, as opposed to like Photoshop, which is for photo editing and whatever else. But Adobe Illustrator. So Ben actually, was hands on the tools, so to speak, I suppose, designing it based on the field trials they've done and the feedback, and then obviously in partnership with Troy. So it's a unique design to Braken Wear.
Yeah, that's really cool because I know there's brands that are using the same print that other brands are using because it's just like you can buy the print essentially, and so you can then label it. It's kind of like a white label system where you can label label their product as your product, and so can another brand. So it's not necessarily unique versus like the Braken Wear stuff. It definitely is a very unique sort of layout. In regards to camo in general, like, do you kind of know the 101 around it in regards to like a lot of it is basically, from my understanding, is like as long as you stay still, the animals aren't necessarily going to see you there. But within saying that, when you're wearing camo, I notice for myself when I'm out walking through the bush, like I'll have birds almost land on me before they realize, oh no, that's not a tree. Like they get that close. So that's when the camo really starts to kick in, is in that kind of close proximity, is from what I can kind of see in general. So yeah, do you have kind of many insights in regards to that? Like how much does the camo add? And also, I guess it's kind of like, what is the 101 around the camo?
So again, discourse around camouflage, has been happening forever and a day. And I've had the opportunity to be, either an observer or involved in countless of those discussions over the years. And, more recently, obviously, with an interest as the owner of a business that sells camouflage. But back in the day, with that vested interest to want to learn and best equip myself to help me be successful in the field. And I don't think anybody can argue that you can go and be successful without camo. Like we all know bow hunters that have shot stuff in high vis gear, for example, a pair of blue jeans and a
blue tradie shirt or whatever,
flannel shirt or something, exactly. So we all know that it is possible, and it's not unlikely to be able to go and shoot stuff without wearing camo. My disposition has always been that, well, I can't say always been, but I came to a point where I've settled on the fact that I think camo it's like a bit of insurance. I think camo helps you the best when you get seen first. It helps you get that buffer of opportunity where if you are the one who hasn't spotted, like if the game spots you first, you're more likely to still be able to be successful than otherwise. And everything else is a bonus on top. So the fact that a quality camo pattern, and I won't just say Braken Wear, but because there's other good patterns out there, but a quality camo pattern, ultimately, from my understanding of what I've learned over the years and with my science background, is that it will disrupt their ability to focus on you. So when it comes to the difference between what we traditionally know as breaking up an outline, I think the understanding of the way light works and the way vision works has moved on from that to being that if you make it difficult or impossible for an animal to focus on you, then they're more or less looking straight through you. So if they can't focus on you, they can't see you, they don't really know what you are, and if you're just there, then you are more or less blending in. So if you have a camouflage pattern with tones that elicit a background, midground, and foreground tonality, then you are, in essence, disrupting their depth perception. So they can't focus on you. And if you can do that, you don't really need to worry about your outline as such, because you can't be focused on to establish an outline anyway. And that's where, shine, shape, sound, silhouette, all those 5 S's and an M all come in as well. Obviously, you're not going to be able to just walk along and run up to an animal because there's other things that will give you away. But like I said, in the instance where they bust you first, you've got some advantage if you see them soon enough.
Yeah, exactly.
But B, if you see them first, then the rest is just a bonus where you've got an edge of some kind.
Yeah, and it's funny when you were talking about that, I was like, oh, I can relate back to many situations where that exact thing has happened, be it on goats, pig, or deer, where essentially I've walked into a situation, not seen them, walked into a gully or something, not seen the deer or not seen the goats, and they see me and I stop, and it's just enough time for them to go, there's something there, I'm going to watch it for the next 5 minutes. But if I stand still enough, or I only have a slight sway happening every once in a while, like eventually they go back to just being calm and relaxed again. And it's
that's it.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. And I think realistically, everyone listening that's had that same experience was probably thinking the same thing. Like, oh, that's why that happens.
And that's like, I'm a big believer in and as I said, the first bit of Braken Wear I bought was a face veil because I'm just a I'm a white dude. Like I stand out in the scrub and I have to cover my head because it's bald as well, like, but, covering your face and your hands, your backs of your hands, particularly if you're holding a bow out at arm's reach with the side of your hand and your knuckles and that, but your face and your hands, they give us up really quickly. And, very early on in the piece, I started covering my face initially with some scrim and some, stuff I learnt through the Army Reserves and that. And then when I bought ASAC camo and stuff, they made netted hoods with the 3D suit and stuff. So always covering up with that as well. For that same thing, it's that fixation on that particular object or surface or whatever that they can focus on and pin you down with.
Definitely. I've actually been out with mates a few different times where it's happened where we kind of get slightly separated, or one goes out for a stalk and the other one just sits still and waits for them. And it might be that they move from location where you leave them and just shuffle across so they can see you or something. And you're walking back and you're looking in the spot where you left them and you just literally can't see them because they've moved 20 meters to the left or the right. And because they've got that camo on and they're just staying still as you're walking towards them, like you just have no idea they're even there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And really, you kind of think that's the exact same thing that the animals are seeing. It's not until they start to move around, or if for instance, they're wearing a big black backpack or something like that, where it kind of stands out a bit more like a sore thumb to your eye, not necessarily that would for the animal's eye as such. But it is.
It's one of it's one of those things, and it is. And go back again, just quickly talk about the ASAT stuff. They had a quote back on their website in the mid 2000s there, which has always stuck with me. And it's, you're seeing the proof of it more and more and more in the what I would say is the successful modern camouflage patterns. Is that the quote was something like, when did you last see a deer run into a tree? They obviously, like, trees are their world, for example. They will run breakneck through the scrub and they will not run into a tree. So why do you want to make yourself look like a tree? That's something that the deer obviously sees extremely well. And that was a bit of an aha moment for me, because it's like, well, it's not the blending in with the nature that you need to do. It's the disruption of the vision so they don't see you. So why would I want to make myself look like something that they obviously see extremely well? And that was just, it was sort of an epiphany sort of realization. I thought it just makes so much damn sense, and I think in this day and age, again, with more of an understanding of the science behind vision and color perception and all that sort of stuff, that you're seeing that in the successful modern patterns that people are wearing and using, and it's becoming more and more what's the word? Not embraced, but people who are making camouflage patterns are starting to, I think, understand that as well.
So, in regards to the animal's eyesight, do we know which animals kind of see in color versus which ones don't within the game that we hunt here in Australia?
Look, I'm no expert on that, but my understanding is you have deer which will see in a certain spectrum of the UV, but for the rest of it, it's blacks and whites and shades of grey.
Yeah, okay.
That's my understanding. But again, I'm always looking to learn and to find out more. My recollection tells me that I think the only sort of game species that is commonly hunted that sees in the full colour spectrum are turkeys. Which is why they're so damn hard to hunt.
Yeah.
Because apparently their vision is just absolutely impeccable.
Yeah.
But again, I can't really comment on exotic species overseas. I just don't know so much.
And then what about on the side of washing your camo with certain chemicals? Have you guys ever kind of done any tests around that to see what the UV changing is on that? Like I've heard, for instance, if you wash with store-bought liquid, for instance, that some of them will release a UV. It changes the UV, like the way that it gets seen under a UV light, right? Is there truth to that?
I can't say I've purposely done tests myself, but I've always defaulted to washing my stuff in just plain old Lux soap flakes. But again, I think it would depend on, if you are gearing up for the raw and you're hunting deer, that you wouldn't want to be enhancing any UV aspect of your clothing, because as I said, my understanding is that they see in the UV, they can see in the UV spectrum. So to me, I guess I'd have to defer to what I would say is common sense. It just doesn't make sense to me to be using an OMO with UV brighteners per chance that is the case. Whereas I think if you're just going out and smacking some pigs or some goats, then I don't think it is as anywhere near as critical or critical at all. Especially with pigs, their eyes are really, pretty ordinary at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, pretty. You can creep up on them pretty simply, right? Even with them looking towards you to some extent.
Yep.
Especially with camo on, I think it does make a big difference. Yeah, I think that's kind of realistically the biggest things I had around camo. What if you had a separate top to a separate bottom? Like, is there anything major within that with not having like complete uniform throughout your camouflage?
I don't really think there is. Give the scenario an animal's just looking at you and standing there. I personally don't think that there would be anything that would cause that animal to be more likely to see you if you had, distinct top to bottom or whatever. I think if you're moving, then it's going to make a difference.
Yeah.
And I guess I try and sit back and think about, well, that I think that would look weird to me. And in some instances, obviously, you talk about hunting chital, their eyes are so much more acute and amazing than ours. If it's going to look weird to me, it's going to stand out like a sore thumb to them.
Yeah.
So, and then, the other side of the coin is my OCD with I just can't stand mismatched camos. So, from my own perspective, I just wouldn't feel right wearing, real tree camo pants and an ASAT or a Braken Wear top or something. I just couldn't do it, mate. It's just not in me.
I just know, for instance, when I very first started out, right, and the coin was not getting spent where it probably should have been, I definitely had a mixed match, and not that I was very successful back then anyway. But yeah, once I kind of got into the proper camo stuff, I started seeing some difference. But I think that was more so because of my progression as well.
Yeah, it's funny how we correlation and causation sort of overlap so much in what we do. Hey, and last time I was wearing this and I got busted, so I'm not wearing that ever again. It's pretty funny.
And so obviously the climates within Australia are pretty extreme. You've got like extreme heats to extreme colds in certain parts. Do you guys kind of have a fair range where you can kind of cover all aspects of Australia, if not just the world in general?
So we've got summer pants and top. We've got which they go together really well. The summer top is really a really lightweight gauze type, mesh type material. It's really hard to explain. There's nothing out there like it. It's my favorite bit of gear that we have, and it was actually our face veils are made from the same material. And then, as I said earlier, that was the first piece of Braken Wear that I bought, and I pulled out the packet. I was like, "This is awesome." This is such cool material. It's so light. It's so breathable. And in essence, it's a good, I won't say base layer, because ultimately when people think base layer, they think of your merinos or, your sort of your more Under Armour type, hugging type material. But as an undershirt, it's something that you can wear year round. And then we have our winter line, which is we call our peak season line. And we have fleece lined pants with reinforced knees and double layered arse pant seat. And it's got 20,000 DWR rating and all that sort of stuff. So that's really nice and warm, and it's 4-way stretch and all that sort of stuff. It's got the gussets and the vents that you can open up on the sides and that, so you get air movement if you want. And that is complemented with our peak season jacket, which is a soft shell, also 20,000 DWR water resistant fleece lined jacket, not hooded. And then we don't do winter gloves yet, and we'll probably talk about stuff we want to bring to the market if you like, but we don't do gloves yet. We do winter gloves. We do summer gloves. And then the next layer up, I suppose you could say, is that we do we've got an 850 loft down jacket, which is the full hood and all that as well. And that's like, I live in central Queensland, so I don't get to wear a down jacket that much. But let's just say it's coming to Canada with me, and it's coming to Europe with me.
Yeah.
And if apart from the fact that, you know, I live in a warm, sticky, humid environment here, and that makes the Scorcher top my favourite bit of gear. If I lived in Victoria, bar none, the down jacket they're phenomenal. I've owned several down jackets because I lived in Europe and whatever else. So, you know, I appreciate good warm gear, and I just love these down jackets. I can't rave about them more. They're really good bits of kit.
Yeah, it's unreal. And then you talked about bringing out new stuff. Like, what do you guys kind of have planned, or what can you talk about that you?
Oh, I've got to keep some of that a bit close to the chest,
mate. Exactly.
Oh, look, you know, it's no secret, but we want to complement that range with a base layer. That's just something we've always talked about, because we want to be able to give people the option of buying that from us if they want.
Yeah.
And then some of it is a little bit selfish. We want to be able to have access to it as well, you know.
Definitely.
So, you know, part and parcel of owning a business like this is you get to
have a business that can't benefit you as well?
It's like, I think this shit is cool. So, you know, let's get it because we do, you know. The downside comes when you've got to buy, you know, 600 of them because you want one for yourself, you know. But yeah, we want to introduce a base layer, and then we also want to introduce a proper rain jacket. So we have done R&D on those and a bunch of other bits and pieces. But you know, like we're a small business. Definitely. And so ultimately, you know, we will be able to bring those to market when things line up for us, and the timing's right for us and the market, you know, like
definitely.
I don't think it's any secret to anybody at the moment that, you know, spending is tight, and, you know, budgets are really under the screws. So, you know, people sort of aren't necessarily spending money on the frivolous or, you know, the ancillary things that they might have 5 years ago as much as they were. So, but that's just part of life at the moment. So, yeah, but, you know, we're always doing something in the background to either look at what we've got and make it better, or bring something new to the market to complement what we've got. You know, we always want to be driving forwards to be able to turn around and say, you know, like, we mightn't have it available yet, but as a company, you know, we want to be driving and developing and moving forward. And then when the time's right, then that gives us the opportunity to bring stuff to market, which gives hunters access to good gear, you know, from an Australian business. Ultimately.
Definitely. Yeah. I can really appreciate good base layer kit too now, because I didn't use it last year when I was down in Tamworth, and then I did use it this year, and we had a -5 day, and I was completely fine. I was out in the thick of it, and last year I would have absolutely froze having that day. I think we got to -2 last year, and I absolutely froze. Versus this time around, like it was pretty bearable just having like the full layering system happening. It was it was a complete game changer. Like it really is a big difference. Yeah.
And like, mate, my time in Switzerland taught me that, you know, you can't underrate a good base layer anymore, because it is, you know, it's just that foundation, you know, and if you've got that foundation right, it's easy to strip stuff off the top. And, you know, sometimes, you know, you might just, I can remember not long before I came back to Australia, it was December over there, and I was doing lots of training sessions to get fit for my fitness test to apply to get into the fire service.
Yep.
And I was going down the local track, and I drag my kettlebells down there and that sort of stuff, and I'd do laps and up and down the stairs and pull-ups and push-ups and all this stupid stuff. I'd have a base layer, a pair of shorts, a shirt, and a long sleeve base layer top on.
Yeah.
You know, like that was it at, you know, -5 degrees with snow, you know. But that base layer was just the epitome of that foundation to keep my core warm and keep everything sorted, you know. And even then you'd break a sweat but you then rug back up over the top of it, and with a proper base layer with the, you know, we talk about the wicking properties and all that sort of stuff, thanks to Pat Rafter. But it makes a hell of a difference, absolutely. And then you think about the days, you think about days hunting, backpack hunting, for example, 4, 5, 6 nights or something like that. You've got to have that good foundation, otherwise, you're going to be in a world of hurt.
Definitely, yeah. No, I think it's very crucial, right? Especially if you wanted to get into like the Vic High Country or just going to spaces where you're not used to. I mean, going anywhere where it's cold, it's going to be needed. In regards to like your future endeavors with hunting, like maybe do you have any kind of big goals that you're trying to go for within, or any hunts that you're looking forward to here in Australia?
Well, I'm out of the country for the next 3.5 months, so
This year's a write-off.
that's pretty much to the end of the year. But yeah, we come back mid-December, and I've got off until almost the end of January. So
Wow,
I'm really looking forward to some me time.
definitely.
Because 3.5 months with my 2 girls and my wife will probably be enough by that stage. So, but yeah, like by that stage, I'll just be heading to Central Queensland again. Maybe swing by Springshaw if you're up there. But just go and smack some pigs out there and walk the lazy Dawson River and see what I can see and whatever else. That'll be my first port of call. But yeah, look. I haven't, apart from that, like I don't even have that lined up as such. But I've got Jay, who I've with my podcast, I did an episode with there a few weeks back. He's offered to take me out after Reds down on a block he's got not far from here, which is really nice. So that'll be happening when obviously the time's right to go and hunt down there. But yeah, while I'm in Canada, I certainly want to have some conversations with Amy's rallies over there, with my wife's rallies, to perhaps see if I can organise a solo return trip.
Awesome. So they are hunters.
And then obviously, I think Amy's older uncle hunts, but where they live and the let's just say it's highly likely that pretty much everybody, including them and around them, are hunters. So and then cool. As I said, my mate Rog in Colorado, like I'm certainly going to be asking questions there because I think elk's at the top of my list, and a lot of other people. So
that was going to be the next question of the animals over there, because obviously Canada has a bit of a different range compared to what you can get into in America. Elk is definitely, I think elk and whitetail, they're kind of like the main things that are promoted. It's what you probably see the most of on YouTube and whatever else. But is there an animal species that you'd love to go over and kind of do? Maybe let's just do one from each country, so you don't have to choose just one.
Well, no, like I was saying the other day, elk, I think they're just the epitome of the antlered species, and you talk about an amazing experience and adventure and all that sort of stuff. And then too, if I can line it up to go to Colorado to hunt with my mate Rog, that would be absolute cream on the crop for me, because really coincidental that I know this guy Rog, because when we moved to Switzerland, my wife had a contract at the school she worked at, and so did Rogers, and we were both unemployed. So we were in the international terms is what they call trailing spouses. So here's this guy from Colorado who was a bow hunter who met this bloke from Australia who was a bow hunter, and it was just like, you do what? Hang on, what?
Good, yeah.
And it was just, we just got on like a house on fire, mate. So we hung out for basically 2 years, and it was really cool to meet someone from somewhere completely different, but you just on the same level and you speak the same language. So,
best buds straight away. Yeah.
Oh, it was awesome, man. And like to be able to go over and hunt in Colorado with Rog would be fantastic. And then like don't know, that's like I've caribou and ibex, and I'd love to hunt them red in New Zealand, and like as I said, I missed out on that Mongolian hunt, so that the hunt for the ibex would be something fantastic.
Yeah, Especially now that you've had such a taste for it in a sense, right? Like I'm sure you probably started to envision what was going to happen, go through the visualizations of hunting ibex, started to do a little bit of extra research into ibex in general. Like there's a lot of things that would have, you've left the stone unturned there.
Oh, mate, every time I see Benny Selleris share something with Sky Ibex and a little bit of me cries, you know. But, like I said the other day, there's just something about those animals that absolutely fascinates me because of the thousands of years of history behind them and the hunting in that area of the world, you know, and the culture and the history that's attached to it. It's just, it's something that as a an Aussie bloke with English, German, and Welsh heritage, it doesn't really it doesn't really compute to me in this day and age. But it invokes an appreciation that's sort of, I don't think you can put into words.
Yeah, definitely. And then in regards to the Australian deer species, have you hunted them all?
Certainly not. No, not really. I've hunted the Chital, Rusa, and Reds, and that's about it. I haven't really had any opportunity for the others.
Yeah, and been successful on all three?
Bits and pieces here and there.
And have you eaten all three?
I have, yes.
What's your pick? Because it's funny, because that's the three that a lot of people kind of say, oh, they're the best eaters. And I'm intrigued. Yeah, what is your pick?
Look, I love them all, but it's funny. I can't go past the first venison I ever had was fallow, but I think it was a combination of the experience that not talking the actual standalone, the meat as itself as a standalone, meal. Not talking that down at all, but it just we were hunting on a property where we had accommodation in the shearers' quarters. I had a wood stove. It was the middle of winter, so we had the stove going all night to keep us warm and everything. And then we got up before dawn to go hunt, and we just wrapped up these two, beautiful bits of venison. I think you had some butter and garlic and a bit of onion, and we just put them in the wood stove there in the oven. And basically the whole thing obviously just slow cooked all day.
Yeah, good.
And then we came back and after dark, and it was just, falling to pieces. It was just absolute. And, so a big long day's hunting. It was cold. It was cooked to perfection. Just everything was just.
This is perfect. Yep.
Perfect just the pinnacle, So,
yeah.
Yeah.
And that was fallow.
That was fallow deer,
yeah. Yeah, it's pretty interesting because I think you hear it from every angle. Someone's like, nah, Reds are the best. And someone's like, nah, Roos is the best. And then a lot of people say Chittle's by far up here better. But I haven't had Chittle yet. I've had fallow, Roosa, and Reds. And I'm the same as you. I like them all. It's like I'll eat them all. Really.
I think the opportunity to eat any of the game species, is, I think it's a lot more layered than just a lump of meat from Woolies,
Definitely.
And I think there's as hunters, whether it's something that we've taken or something someone else is taking that we're getting to share in, I think that level of understanding of what it represents adds so much more to it. And does it make it taste any better or not? I don't know. If it was an objective blind sample test, probably not. But who cares, mate? To me, it bloody well does. So
yeah, exactly.
That counts at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'm actually. I was just looking at the website today. They're like a local delivery service that do lambs. I'm thinking about getting a lamb, but I'm like, but that kind of breaks my streak of not having to buy meat. I'm like, I'd love to have some lamb, but at the same time, I also I haven't really bought meat for like the last 2 years. Pretty much, it's coming up to. It's crazy just because of hunting. So yeah.
So I'll tell you a funny story. So as I said, my mate Bernie lives 3 doors up the road, and the whole face veil Braken Wear thing came about because he lived in Houston for several years. And he ended up coming back here. He bought the house up the road, moved in and everything. And it was right at the start of COVID. And he's a rifle hunter, sort of by, what would you say, he's predominantly a rifle hunter who's got a background in rural living and shooting pest control and that sort of thing, military background. He's come back from Houston, and he's come down for beers, and he's like, so I bought myself a compound. I'm like, oh, right. He said, well, you better teach me how to bloody well use it. I said, oh, okay, fair enough. So I did some asking around the place and got us onto a local block that had a few pigs, and this particular property is an ex-peanut farm. And the fellow that owned it, he said, yeah, you can come out, no worries at all. He said, the one rule is if you shoot anything, everything gets taken off the block. It's about 350, 400 acre block.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, yeah, all right, no worries. So we went out to meet him. We took, you don't miss the opportunity to throw the bows in or the guns in or whatever, but we threw the bows in. We thought just in case, we'll go out and have a meet and greet and a bit of a walk around, and didn't expect to see anything. Anyway, so by 7:30, 8 o'clock that night, Bernie had knocked over 2 big pigs, his first bow shot animals. These things were probably easy 85, 90 kilos.
Yeah.
We'd managed to get them into the back of my ute. We'd gotten home very late for dinner, very late for bedtime for our children because we both got girls the same age. We're already in the poo big time with the missus. And then, of course, we're like, well, we got to butcher these things up and, make the most of what we've got.
Uh-huh.
So did all the duties at home and whatever. So it was about 9:30 at night. By the time I finally got sorted, I grabbed a 6-pack, went up to Bernie's place. We're stringing these pigs up in the back shed, tarps on the ground. We're butchering these things. and so that was all well and good. We fridged it, bagged it, fridged everything, and then we're like, well, what do we do with everything that's left? It's like, well, I've got a wheelie bin, you've got a wheelie bin, so we'll bag them up, we'll put them in the wheelie bin. So I raced back home, had maybe a 6-pack or more by that stage, grabbed my wheelie bin. It was about 10:30 at night. I'm running back up the road with the wheelie bin. Street's dead quiet, right? I live in a quiet area, so there's a noise of the wheelie bin going up the road. Dogs start barking. So then we've got to manhandle what's left into a couple of garbage bags and a couple of wheelie bins each. That's all well and good. This is the weekend. So bin collection day here is a Wednesday.
Yeah.
So here's the leftovers. There's this entire pig in my bin for the next 3 days. And I think I'd come off night shift or something, but I hadn't taken the bin out yet. And I'm sitting inside having a coffee, and I see the rubbish truck go up the road, and I was like, oh shit. so normally what happens is he would go up the street, turn around, and then come back down. But this day it must have been a new guy because he's come down the street and he's done my side first, and obviously I'd missed it because I didn't take the bin out.
Yeah.
And I've got this pig carcass in this bin. I'm like, that's going to be so rank in a week's time. So I've raced out in my jammies, wheeled the bin across the road to my neighbour's place. And I thought, he'll pick it up on the way back up the street. So he's pretty, they don't mind doing that for us if we miss him. But then I thought, oh, shit, I hope my neighbour doesn't walk out and go to put something in the wrong bin. There's this bloody big pig carcass in the bin. I thought, how am I going to explain that? He's going to be calling the cops on me. This bloke's been murdering things. But no, because it wasn't uncommon. We used to often, if my bin was full, I'd put something in my neighbour's bin, or if his is full, he'd put something in mine. I was just like, oh no. But yeah,
it all played out though. The bin truck got it. In the end.
It was all good at the end of the day. So yeah, Dale didn't put anything in his bin, and he come back up the street, and the garbo collected it. So
I've heard a few different stories of similar sort of outcomes, right? People butchering species up at home, be it pigs or deer or whatever, and they've tracked it kind of a few hours to get it home and then have to do it all and like, how are we going to do this? But yeah, it all works out for the long run. I was actually surprised that you said you just chucked it straight in, especially being up at Bundy. Like I'm sure the heat. What time of year was this?
Oh, look, to be honest, I can't remember.
Because I can imagine the middle of summer it would be a bit more revolting.
Yeah,
to not freeze it or anything.
Yeah, it must have been reasonably cool because I think I remember, like, I don't remember sweating or like it being that hot. And that's most of the Europe here anyway, so it must have been reasonably cool.
Yeah, with it being an old peanut farm, were they like? Is there still peanuts there, and were they great eaters then?
Oh. Mate, they had 4 inches of fat across the back of them. That was incredible. Yeah. Little milk teeth on them. Like the boar hardly even had hooks, and he was 85, 90 kilo.
Yeah,
it was just phenomenal. absolutely phenomenal. Was a nice little block, that one, actually. We lost access because the farmer leased out the cultivation side of it again, and just he still lives on the house block. So it was a bit disappointing, but
That's unfortunate.
yeah.
Especially when it's great wild pork like that. I actually put up a video on my Instagram the other day of this boar that I shot, a little boar the other day that I shot, and it was not an eater at all, like very bony, very
Yeah, I
hollowed
saw that
out.
one.
Yeah. I showed just a video of it and kind of zoomed in, and there's eggs all over him, which is I've now learnt lice eggs. He had lice all through him, which is also very common. Like a lot of the pigs do have that, and even the pigs I've eaten do have that. But he was like next level bony, very hollow in the back end, and just he didn't look like a good pig. Like you wouldn't get much from him anyway. And I was there for a meat trip. I'm like, I'm going to get some meat at some point this weekend.
Yeah.
Ended up shooting this crack of a shot on the sow, and I didn't take videos or anything of her. Like I just literally got straight into action. I'm like, oh, she's an eater, and got into butchering and do that whole thing. And
nice.
I'm like, shit, I forgot everything. But yeah, anyway.
That's not a bad thing sometimes, man.
It's not, and that's the thing. Like, you don't need to showcase everything, definitely. But for me, I was like, when I first took that video of the boar, I'm like, oh, when I get an eater this weekend, I'm going to definitely video it. And then I just completely forgot. I just got to the heat of the moment. I'm like, you know what? It was actually a pretty hot day, even though it was in the middle of summer. Oh, sorry, middle of winter. It was a pretty hot day, so I had to kind of get to it if we were going to get to keep the meat.
Yeah, definitely. Now, it actually, watching that little clip reminded me of my best boar that I shot when I was up on the Cape, and the he said just look like it was just a bag of bones. Now this was an old boar, obviously, going backwards in condition, but looking at your video just reminded me of the hips and that, and you just see that drawn paunch, sort of look to them, and
definitely,
I was just like that was exactly what that old boar looked like, so for a young boar like that, he must have been pretty cruel.
Yeah, I figured he must have had something going on with him. I don't know what it would have been, but yeah, at the same time, I wasn't going to dig around inside of him and have a look at the liver.
I was going to say, happy not to open him up and have a look.
Yeah, exactly.
Leave that well alone.
Happy days. And it's funny because talking to a lot of the New Zealand friends, and I went out for dinner with a New Zealand mate the other day, and he was saying, mate, all the pigs that we shoot over there, we eat, like we take them all. We were just so used to every pig that you shot over there, you would take for meat. But they also don't have brucellosis or anything like that. So he's like, when I came over, exactly. When he came over, he had to kind of get used to that. Now he's like completely scared. He's like, well, I don't want to touch any of them in case they've all got brucellosis. I'm like, no, there's things you can do. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, that's it. It's interesting, like the cultural differences in that, isn't it? Even the regulations in the US, you have to take every skerrick of eatable meat, and you after at no stage can you leave anything behind bar that which you can't utilise. So in some instances that's really good, but in cases where there's disease, you obviously have to be quite cautious.
Definitely. I'm very grateful for that law in America, because a lot of the videos that I watch for butchering, for learning, like I've only just learned how to butcher an animal in the last 4 years, and it was purely from watching YouTube channels. A lot of stuff I was watching was American based, and just to see how intricate they were with their knife work, essentially to make sure that they were getting the most meat off of the animals and getting, essentially taking every inch that they could of the animal. Like it kind of taught me a lot of extra knife work, I think, from word go. And so I've now taken that on, and every time I go out butchering, or I'm butchering with a friend, like I had a mate chop up half a deer and I had chopped up half of the deer. I'm like, mate, look how much you left on it. Like that's like meals left over. What are you doing?
So even watching Steve Ranella's stuff on Netflix and that, you don't see a lot of that specifically, but you catch bits here and pieces here and there, and you go, oh, that's a different way of doing it, or I like the way they've utilised that, or it's really educational in that regard.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, and that's the thing. There's so much of it out there for us to be able to pull from. It's pretty incredible.
And again, coming back full circle, in forum days versus now, the wealth of information and accessibility that's out there is insane. It is such a rich environment now of learning opportunities, and you've got to, in some instances, filter out the chaff from the wheat a bit. But there's so much good quality learning opportunities out there for people. for free. There's countless amount of it that's valuable and quality for free. But even in other instances where you can subscribe to a learning course of some kind, or as other people do, go and do the butchering courses at TAFE or something, or whatever like that. And there's opportunities to further your skills and to therefore enriching your opportunities and experience and what you can take away from what it is that you're doing. Is just unreal. It's so good to see.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it was must have been 2019, like just before COVID and everything came in. Mitch Warren invited me to go out to the Renegade Bowman's Day where they used to do it all the time, and they would have people from kind of all over Queensland come down, and they would have an event where they'd put on their 3D shoot for the weekend, but then you'd also have a day of like learning how to butcher. You'd have a day of like people sharing their brands and bits and pieces. And I think is it Graham Cash? What shop does he own?
Sue Archery in Maryborough.
So he came down. He brought a goat down that he'd shot and
nice.
And butchered it up in front of everyone because he's a butcher by trade. I was
going to say he's a butcher by trade.
Yeah, and so he literally just did it in front of everyone, and that was really eye opening for me as well. Like just to see the methods that he used, and he was showing us how to roll a shoulder once you'd actually once you'd boned it, just how you can roll it back up as a cut. And he would grab a PVC pipe with the netting, tie the netting on the bottom, and he'd just drop the meat through the PVC pipe. So I was in a perfectly round circle already, and just pop out in the net. I was like, wow, like little things like that you just never
so simple
never think of. Yeah, exactly. And seeing it in the flesh was just it was pretty valuable stuff, that's for sure.
We actually did we organised through the forums Bowhunter Education Day with the Game Council in Orange back in the day, the Orange Bow Club, Orange ABA Club. I think it was ABA. Don't hold against me if I'm wrong, anyone from out there. And the same thing there. Someone brought along a deer and butchered it up and did the whole demo and stuff too. And they did bow tuning and, the whole works. So they did a field course in navigation basics and stuff like that for sort of new guys and whatever else. And we had actually reps from the Game Council come along and talk about that because it wasn't, I'd only been a year or two old at that stage. It wasn't an overly new thing, but wasn't an old thing. It hadn't been around long. And talk about obviously, access to the state forest and our licensing and that sort of business. And it was exceptionally valuable. It was a really, really awesome opportunity to go along to, and the learning was invaluable. The coolest thing out of that for me was talking with a guy. I think now, funnily enough, his name is Guy, but he actually. He was the fellow, I say Guy because his name's Guy, but he was the bloke who took the rep from the RSPCA hunting and proved the efficacy of the bow to dispatch an animal humanely. And that was the final tick to get our licensing approved.
Wow.
He was a guy. He was a member of the forums for a number of years too. But you're sitting down and having a chat face to face about that experience for him. He said now, not quite decades, but 15 years later or whatever it is, bow hunters still getting the opportunity to access state forests through our licensing, thanks to, at the end of the day, his ability to humanely dispatch something. And I believe it was with a longbow. I could be wrong, but
wow.
It's phenomenal to sit and chat with him about that.
Talk about the added pressure and whether he knew the depth of that shot or not. I'm not sure, but it's a fair bit of extra weight to carry on your shoulders on a shot.
Big time, full credit to him for doing it too, insane.
I also wonder how much that, in general, like the R license would bring in for the New South Wales government. And I've heard it's a $1 million industry in general, but that brings into maybe even like a $10 million industry, but that brings into account cars that are being bought to be able to go on the trips, to be able to do the things, the fuel being bought, the gear, the camping gear, and everything that's being brought into these national forests is not just the hunting. So I would like to know, like, hey, well, what are the fees that you're earning just from that? And how can we
fees alone? And you'd probably stop and think that maybe, and I reckon quite likely, that actual fees, that information should be available from Freedom of Information.
It probably is, yeah.
Yeah, or there'd be some kind of amount or dollar figure on something that would give you a pretty good idea. with regards to that. Be interesting to see if they release it to someone from Queensland though.
True.
Because they're a bit funny like that.
Yeah, definitely. Like at the end of the day, it's like, what would you do with that anyway? Because I'm pretty sure just because of the whole thing here in Queensland is that they're locking down any state forestry because they want it to be, they essentially see it as unsafe country, right? And they don't want to have the liability of having anyone go on there and get injured and then risk being sued. So they're just shutting it all down.
Yeah. The mindset is something that I can't fathom. Irrespective of a whole lot of it doesn't make any sense to me, and the more I think about it, the more frustrated I get.
Yeah, I mean that's half the world, unfortunately, nowadays. Right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of
and look,
stuff.
it even extends to carp fishing. You talk to Zach, and the carp fishing that he does down in South Australia, and you go, well, for decades now, I've been throwing my hands up, going, why can't we shoot carp in rivers in Queensland? I know property out of Gundawindi I used to be able to go to. There was just carp everywhere, but not supposed to shoot them, So where's the legality but where's the common sense? Down there, you've got I think it's called the Jumeric River, and parts of it crisscross New South Wales and Queensland, and you go, well, just here I can't shoot them, but over there I can.
Yeah.
It's like, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where they are; they're still a scourge and a pest. But
still going to be creating the same issues where they are.
That's right. So, but it's all. You just got to keep trying to put it out there and fight the good fight. But where you get the opportunity to speak up and speak out and educate people, and get those people on side who might be indifferent to what we do. The more people that appreciate, I think that there's people out there that hunt and love the environment too. The more that we'll sort of be able to have a bit more of a voice, I suppose.
Definitely, and I honestly, some of the guys that I hit it from to start with are some of the dudes that are most interested in hearing my stories nowadays, which is interesting. Like going to, just the gym, for instance, there was two guys in particular, and there was one conversation we had in general about hunters before I'd kind of really got into hunting that made me go, or maybe I shouldn't talk about my experiences around them. But then now they know I run a podcast. They know that everything that I do is hunting. Like my spare time is pretty much spent hunting. And so I'll come in, they're like, oh man, how's that hunt the other day? And I'll tell them full detail, full graphic stories. And they're like, oh my God, tell me more.
Nice.
Like they're on the edge of the seat, listening to these stories. And it's just funny because at one point I was like afraid to even talk to them about hunting. But now that I've kind of given it in a positive light and talked to them about I've even given both of them meat and everything now. And so I'm fully bringing them in, but yeah, trying to converse them. But at the same time, it's it's interesting, I think, as to how much you assume is actually going to be said versus how much is actually thought of what you do. And I think even the whole vegan topic, like most of the people I know that are vegans are very up for me going hunting because it's in their eyes the most ethical way of sourcing meat. What they're actually really against is the factory farming and everything else. So it's bringing these more conversations of having talking about hunting and sharing what we do out in the bush and sharing about our experiences in a positive light. I think it really can help what we do.
Yeah, 100%. I was completely gone what I was going to say then. I was going to say, and you mentioned the gym environment. It's ironic where, you reflect on, the conversation we had earlier about CrossFit, for example, and the embracement of the paleo, approach to dieting.
Definitely.
And you think, well, you're going out and you're literally, not caveman bludgeoning something to death or hitting it with a spear, but, you don't really get more paleo than
exactly.
I'm going out and sourcing my own protein. And, it was an interesting, I hadn't really stopped to contemplate it that, you sort of felt that in that environment, or maybe it was just those two guys, but, that heightened awareness of that, your pastime and talking about in that environment, it's quite an interesting side thought that I hadn't really stopped to think about before. But,
definitely. Yeah. And I think really Not that the paleo is not as involved anymore. It's definitely not as popular as what it was in the CrossFit world at one point in time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think is realistically anyone that does eat meat, like, why not bring up the conversation with them, because they're a meat eater at the end of the day. And a lot of people are going to say, I just couldn't do that myself, and that's fine. It's like, hey, at the end of the day, like, we've got the resources to be able to not do that, and that's okay. And maybe you just would have been a gatherer back in the day. Who knows? Or you would have died. Who cares? But yeah, no. But at the same time, it's it's modern day living.
We'll just shortcut the conversation and throw you off the cliff like it's Sparta.
No, but it's like, at the end of the day, it is modern living. You don't have to, but at the same time, I'm still very responsible for what I get to eat, what my family get to eat, what my friends and other parts of my family get to eat, which I'm excited for, and kind of keeps me coming back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, look, my girls love nothing more than, particularly when I go fishing. I bring home a big flathead or something like that. They absolutely love it. And then you get something, and you're able to I've got a big 35 kilo rotisserie at the back, and cook up on a rotisserie, and pork and beef and lamb, and then in the rack you have chicken legs and stuff like that, and they appreciate the whole lot of it, so it brings, like you said, that extra element to it.
Actually,
it's something pretty cool.
It might be what we wrap on, but my cousin sent me I gotta find this really quickly. He sent me a recipe the other day, which is just absolutely golden. It takes turducken to like a whole new level. It's called stuffed camel. So what you need is...
I can see where this is going.
You need one whole camel, medium-sized, a whole lamb, large size, 20 whole chickens, 60 eggs, 12 kilos of rice, 2 kilos of pine nuts, 2 kilos of almonds, 1 kilo of pistachio nuts, 1 gallon of water, 5 tablespoons of black pepper, salt to taste. And essentially the recipe is stuff it all in together and cook it up. Should feed 110 to 150 people.
I thought you were going to go camel with a cow, with a goat, with a lamb, with a pig, with a lamb, with a chook.
Close
you
to.
You can probably do that too.
Yeah. Well, Luke, thanks for talking, mate. It's gone past very quickly, and I honestly got to say also thank you for all the stuff you've done with the forums. Pretty funny that I didn't even know about before I came into this conversation, but at the same time, like, obviously it's laid some pretty massive foundations with what we've kind of got access to here in Australia in general. And you often hear of the conversations of people saying like, oh yeah, I used to jump on the forums, I absolutely love them, or I used to read the magazines, I absolutely loved them. And yeah, you're kind of the man behind the magic there, which is awesome. So thank you for what you've done there as well.
Oh, look, no thanks needed, man. Like, at the end of the day, to me, it's just like, well, part of my, like I said, initially starting it off was the desire and the thirst for knowledge. But then, after a while, it became more about other people have the same thirst, and what can I help? What can I do to help that? And what can I do to provide the opportunity for that knowledge to be shared, and therefore to help people learn? And it was literally only just the other day that I sort of stopped and realized, well, like it seems to be a pattern for me, where my previous career of being a teacher and now my current career of being a firefighter is, I don't mind helping people. So
definitely,
at the end of the day, if people can learn more about what we do to either help their success, help their experience, which means it's positive and constructive for them, which means they're going to be invested in it, they're going to share in it, they're going to encourage other people into it, then it's better for, and I don't like using the term, but it's better for the sport, it's better for the pastime, which means it's better for everybody, and you complement that with the attachment that I have to it because of those same constructive, positive experiences. And I think, well, if I can share that with other people, and I have, friends that I've helped learn and get into hunting and stuff like that. And I've seen their experiences grow through it, and I see what richness they get out of it. No different to you with this podcast, then it's all good. You know what I mean? Like, it's all good. And if every single body out there gives, just a drop in the ocean of something constructively helpful to other people for their investment in either bow hunting or the outdoors, or a hunting pursuit of some kind, then long term down the track, hopefully our grandkids can still get to do what we do.
Definitely.
And everyone has a hell of a time doing it. So it's, to me, that's where it got to and where it is now, more so than that desire to learn. While I still learn every day, I learn on every hunt.
100%.
I just value that ability to be able to hopefully provide something where other people can learn as well, knowing how valuable it was to me and what others have helped me learn over the years and from back in the day.
Definitely. I think there's also the element of it's like a pillar of life, essentially, that we need connections, right? We need connections to be able to thrive as individuals and as humans.
Sure.
And it's like the camaraderie and brotherships that we've kind of been able to build over what we do through bow hunting is probably not something that you stepped into realizing you're going to be doing. It's definitely not something that I realized was going to happen with me, of being able to build up this massive friendship group around me. Like, some of my best mates now are bow hunters, which is pretty crazy. Like, coming from a world of where I've still got all my really good mates that I've kind of grown up with, like 20-year plus mates, but at the same time, like, I've got all these great new mates that I'm hanging out with quite a lot, which is awesome. And that whole connection piece and being able to almost fill that cup up a little bit more and helping other people to have that connection and be a point of call for a lot of people to kind of come in and utilize. I think is also another powerful piece to it all as well. And as you said,
Certainly.
like, helps to kind of, it helps that you like helping people in the long run. And realistically, it's something that I love doing too, is helping others. Like, it's something that I've always kind of done within the businesses I've run and whatever else. But it
100%.
It just doesn't. It's easy to keep going when you're constantly hearing stories of how much it's helping people and how much they've connected with other people, and that it's like they're filling their different pillars of life. Whereas it's like that person beforehand, they might have been completely lost, they might have been depressed, they might have been like down and out, and essentially they've just found this one thing through bow hunting, and they've made this now massive connection through people, and it's taken them further and further and beyond. It's pretty cool.
Yep, for sure. And look, I'd be exceptionally. I think it would be remiss of me to be talking like this and not also say that I was probably 20, 21 when I started the forums, and there was different interaction with different people that I reflect on now, and I think like, I should have handled that better and handled that differently, and I either made a dick of myself or I was just a complete prick, and that was just the wrong way to go about it. But and I look at that now with the life behind me that I've had, both as a parent, as a teacher, and various other experiences in life, and I go, well, there's affordances that I've got to make where I will be endeavouring to reach out to certain people and saying, hey, look, I was an idiot. Hey, can we have a chat, for example?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I can't be too hard on myself or anyone else in that realm, because you can only do what you can do. You only know what you know.
Exactly.
And you deal with stuff at the time that you, in the best way, or what you think is right or whatever. But like, there's still that respect there. Even if there was issues or things that arose where on hindsight you go, I could have done that better, but that's part of the journey as well. And I think the community as a whole deserves people out there who are willing to make sure that they're still doing the right thing by the pastime and put their egos aside.
Definitely.
Because I think egos hurt things and hurt the pastime.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we can't gauge a person by their mistakes that they've made, but only by the actions they continue to take, right? Like, I think that's probably one of the better ways to kind of look at it. And everyone's made mistakes, no matter what it is. And realistically, at the day, you could have had a shit day and you could have accidentally taken it on that person. Like, you never know what the person's going through that is also doing the
the firing back, let's say. And so, yeah, it's just kind of, it is unfortunate that it played out that way, but at the same time, yeah, I don't think you should beat yourself up about it.
Oh no, I'm just saying it's one of those things. I think it's also part of the circle, you know what I mean, or the cycle, you know, like, yeah, it's, and it's no different to, you know, that sort of happens within families and, you know,
Definitely.
Eventually you come to your senses and have a chat and talk shit out and get over it and move on. And everyone's bigger and better for the most of it, I suppose. But yeah, it's been an awesome experience so far. And, you know, if it all keeps going the way it is, then, you know, you and I will be around and talking about it another 20 years' time. And
Exactly.
Laughing about this sort of shit as well.
Definitely. Whereabouts can people follow along on socials?
Socially. Okay, so personally, I'm on Instagram as Braken Hunter. You can find me on Instagram. On Instagram, we also have the Braken Wear page for that side of the business, I suppose.
Yeah, it's just Braken Wear.
Just Braken Wear on social media. We have the Braken Wear page on Facebook. There is AussieBowhunters.com is the forums. So it's the Bowhunter Group of Australia, but the URL, that's too long for a URL. But so it's just AussieBowhunters.com. And there's also the Bowhunters Group of Australia Facebook page and group. And if you look those up on Facebook, I'm pretty sure the banners have got the www. Address. I've got a couple pointed to the forums, so that might be the other one. And then finally is my mine podcast, which is the Hunting Republic. I'm on Instagram as well.
Perfect. Good stuff. Awesome.
So yeah, which I'll have to have you on.
Right, definitely. Yeah, I'm keen.
At some point. I'll get to fire all these questions at you.
Well, thanks for
Matty
joining
under
us,
the grill.
Luke. Appreciate it, mate.
Mate, it's been a pleasure.
That wraps up this week's episode. Thank you so much for joining us, team. If you did have any topics, questions, or you wanted to suggest a guest for Becoming a Bowhunter, you can send me an email at matty@becomingabowhunter.com. If you are enjoying the show or you've enjoyed in particular episodes, please do me a solid and share it around with your friends. If you are not already, please hit the subscribe button, as the more subscribers we get, the higher the podcast gets ranked, and that definitely helps out for showing it to other individuals. If you are not already following me on Instagram, it's at becomingabowhunter.podcast, and on YouTube, it's Becoming a Bowhunter. Get out, team, fling some arrows, get that practice in, and walk those yards in the paddocks until you find those critters. That is it for now, but not the last time that you'll hear from Becoming a Bowhunter.